We have less than a week until the Into the Light event drops, and we're getting a lot of cool things. 3 new PvP maps, the Whisper and 0 Hour exotic missions back, but the new thing is going to be the Onslaught PvE Horde mode. Now, you'll be able to do up to 50 waves with this, so you definitely need some builds that come with great crowd control, survivability, and boss DPS. Now, I've already made videos for both the Hunter and Warlock, so if you want to go check those out, that would be great. But in today's video, we're going to be going over Titans and what are going to be some of the best loadouts to bring into that activity. Before we dive into it, if you check the description of this video, I'm going to provide the dim links for every single build I'm going to be showing off in this video, and I did the same thing for both the Hunter and Warlock video. So if you want to copy any of these builds, test them out for yourself, adjust them to your heart's content, you totally can. Now, let's dive on into it. The first build is going to center around the Banner of War Strand Titan, which is obviously going to be good for 3 things, which is crowd control, DPS overall, and survivability. Now, there's 2 exotics you can pair with this setup. First up being the Synthesept. So it's perk biotic enhancements. When surrounded, you gain increased melee and super damage, as well as improved weapon handling and reload speed. The main thing is that as long as you're surrounded, having that increased melee damage and super damage is going to be fantastic. And with a Horde mode like this, you're more than likely going to be surrounded almost constantly, which means you also get those bonuses to handling and reload speed as well. So overall, very good exotic, very passive and easy to use. The second exotic is going to be the Worm God Crest. Now, this one is really good to max out that melee damage. So it's perk Burning Fist. Defeating a target with melee or a finisher grants escalating melee damage, which decays over time. Essentially, there's a bar off to the left when you start getting melee kills, and once that gets all the way full, that means you have the max damage, and it'll decay over time instead of just dropping down to 0 like it used to. And higher levels of Burning Fist grant increased weapon damage. So not only can you have really good melee damage, but having free bonus weapon damage can also work here as well. Not only the subclass, obviously the super in and of itself is going to be really good for ad clear, but also for DPS in general. For abilities, you can use whichever barricade you want, rally or towering, depending on, how you want to go about certain encounters. For movement, I like strafe, but you can use what you like. For melee, we have the Frenzy Blade, which does cost sever, but this melee is very powerful. And for the grenade, I'd recommend the grapple for the grapple melee because it can take advantage of Synthesepts and Worm God Caress. For aspects, the big one here is Banner of War, like I mentioned. So defeat a target with a melee attack, finisher, or a sword to raise a Banner of War that pulses with energy, periodically healing nearby allies and increasing melee and sword damage. Targets defeated by you and nearby allies charge the banner, increasing the speed it pulses. The main thing here is that all you need is a couple of melee kills and you can get healing for you and your teammates. We're really not going to take advantage of any of the sword damage, so you can kind of ignore that portion. The second aspect is going to be Into the Fray. So destroying a tangle or casting your super grants Woven Mail for nearby allies. While you have Woven Mail, your melee regeneration is increased. Woven Mail is pretty much extra damage reduction. So if you already have 100 resilience, you get even more damage reduction, but you can also give it to your teammates, and we definitely want that melee back as much as possible. For fragments, first up, Thread of Generation. So any damage I deal will generate grenade energy, which means we can get that grapple back pretty quickly. Next is Thread of Continuity. So any strand debuffs have an increased duration, suspend, unravel, and sever. Next, Thread of Fury. Damaging targets with the Tangle grants melee energy. This one's really good for this build. Like I said, you want that melee as much as possible. Then lastly, Thread of Warding. Picking up an orb power grants Woven Mail. Now, like I mentioned, you can get Woven Mail from Into the Fray, but the thing is that you had to have a Tangle to have it rock, and tangles have a 15-second cooldown and you only get 10 seconds of Woven Mail. So with Thread of Warding on top of this, you pretty much guarantee you have Woven Mail 24/7 for yourself. Under the artifact, first up, we got Flame, Fiber, and Freeze for the Solar Strand Siphon mod. So we are going to be taking advantage of both Solar and Strand weapons with this build. And with the Solar weapons, Flint Striker is going to come into play. So those rapid Solar weapon precision hits and final blows grant Radiant. Now with that, we can proc Kindling Trigger, so it'll allow us to scorch unscorched targets with our solar weapons. With Torch, while we're Radiant, we deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by Strand and Stasis debuffs, so this pretty much free weapon damage to a target affected by those, and then also Raise of Precision. So while you're Radiant, Solar Precision Final Blows cause combatants to ignite. It's pretty much a free ignition, which is really good. And then I'm also going to be using Unraveling Orbs, so picking up Orb of Power grants Strand weapons Unraveling rounds, which means, number one, I can unravel targets, but also number two, we can pop those anti-barrier shields. And then next is Horde Shuttle. Damaging unraveled targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a threadling. This is just kind of a small bonus here. The main thing we are going to be taking advantage is the solar portions here, just for some of that bonus damage, especially with Torch. I'd also recommend From Whence You Came and Wish Into Being. I usually almost always put these two on, regardless of what setup I'm using. For armor mods and stats, you definitely want resilience at 100 here. You want to have that at the max. You usually have 100 resilience for almost every build that I do regardless. After that, you can focus on strength. Strength is actually tied to your melee, so again, we want that melee back as quickly as possible, but I also am spec'd into intellect so I can get that super back pretty quickly. You don't really have to have a high discipline because with all the damage we're going to be dealing, you can get the grapple back pretty quickly. For our armor mods here, on the helmet, I got the Solar Strand Dual Siphon mod like I mentioned, so I can create orbs from both Rapid, Solar, and Strand weapon final blows. Next, I got Hands-On, then also Powerful Friends. On the gauntlets, I got Impact Induction, Momentum Transfer, and Heavy Handed. On the chest piece, I got Harmonic Reserves and then Melee and Arc Damage Resistance, but you can kind of switch these around if you'd like. There's a reason I have Harmonic Reserves. It is for my shotgun, so keep that in mind. On my boots here, I do have Invigoration, so I do get a melee cooldown when I pick up Orbs of Power, but you can switch this out for Recuperation if you needed that extra health back, but I don't think we're going to need it. I also have double Solar Weapon Surge on the boots here. And on the class item, I'm rocking Time Dilation with double Outreach. For weapons, obviously in the primary slot here, I have a shotgun, specifically the Swordbreaker Adept. This is a Strand shotgun from Crow to Zen. This has 1-2 punch on it, so hitting a target with nearly every pellet in the shot increases melee damage for a short duration. This is the enhanced one. With the regular perk, you have to hit every shot, but the main thing is that as long as you shoot a target and then melee, you get a lot of damage out of it. Plus, on top of just, using the regular melee, having Syntheseps or Worm God Caress on top of Banner War is going to allow for a lot of melee damage, so you definitely want to take advantage of that. If you don't have the shotgun, any 1-2 punch shotgun will do. The reason I like a Strand one in particular is because I can take advantage of the Unraveling Orbs to pop those anti-barrier champions, like I said, and then also take advantage of Horde Shuttle as well. For my energy weapon, I like a solar weapon. Anything that can come with incandescent is perfect. Again, I have the Summoner here. You have Epichal Integration, Callous Mini Tool, Abyss Defiant. I mean, heck, you can also use Sunshot as well. This is very good. With Summoner, especially since it's an auto rifle, I can have those overload rounds for that. Or if I put on a hand cannon, like Epichal Integration here, I can also put on Unstop Hand Cannon, so I can take care of champs across the board if I need to. Then for the heavy weapon, I personally like Tractor Cannon. Now, the only reason to really use this is so you can, proc that vulnerability on a target so you can do a lot more damage to them. For certain enemies, it will suppress them, so they'll stop firing at you. But the main thing is that if you have a very tough target or a champion, you hit them with Tractor Cannon, you switch to your 1-2 punch shotgun, shoot them, melee them, and they usually go down in like one hit. I've seen people one-shot anti-barrier champions. It's absolutely insane. Now, the second weapon setup is going to be double special with a solar heavy. So again, I have this Killer shotgun with 1-2 punch. Honestly, any shotgun with 1-2 punch, I just like solar so I can still take advantage of the artifact. Again, same thing with your heavy weapon. Put on your favorite solar heavy. I have this crafted Apex Predator. Same thing with Virus Contempt and Cataclysmic for linears if I needed some precision damage. But the main thing is the Navigator Trace Rifle from Ghost of the Deep Dungeon. Now, its perk, Protective Weave. Firing this weapon at an ally grants woven mail to both the user and the target. Also has a Weft Cutter, so dealing sustained damage severs the target. But the main thing is the catalyst, so special reload and then fire to create a grapple tangle at the targeted point. This is pretty much going to allow you to create a grapple point and abuse the grapple melee. So if you're a very end game player, someone who wants to like really solo some bosses, you can pop a grapple tangle over a target, and then all you have to do is 1-2 punch shotgun and then melee them with the grapple melee. And you can pretty much indefinitely use the grapple as long as you continue to hit the grapple point from the Navigator. I have seen people like put in a bunch of loadouts so they can switch between all these weapons like flawlessly. I've seen people also use, double shotguns here for double 1-2 punch once they put up that grapple point, and then they can have Tractor on as well. So if you wanted to set up a bunch of loadouts, you can. If not, these setups work just fine by themselves. The only thing with the Navigator and shotgun combo with double special is that you might run out of special, so I would recommend potentially putting on special ammo finder here. Moving on to the next build, we're going to focus on Solar Titan, pairing it with the Pyro Gale Gauntlets. This exotic used to be a hot swap one, so you'd switch to this whenever you needed to use your super, but now with the buff to Consecration, it's actually pretty decent. So its perks, Percussive Flames, modifies Burning Maul into a single high damage slam of your hammer that creates several cyclones of flame, and Consecration's second slam creates a cyclone of flame. The main thing with this is, number one, Burning Maul becomes a one-shot super and it does a lot of damage, and we can take advantage of a couple things on the artifact to make it even better. But secondly, the Consecration melee is going to be really good for crowd control. For a super, choose Burning Maul. Do not put on Hammer of Soul because Burning Maul is the thing that's going to take advantage of the gauntlets, obviously. For abilities, you can use Rally or Towering Barricade depending on how you want to play. For movement, I like Strafe, but you can use what you like. For melee, it doesn't really matter. Throwing Hammer and Hammer Strike both have the same cooldown. With Throwing Hammer, if you want to throw it at a target and then go pick it up, again, That's really the only difference here. I just like using throwing hammer. And then for the grenade, I like the fusion, but you can use whichever one that fits your fancy. You don't need the healing grenade, and I'm going to tell you why when we get to the fragments. For aspects, Roaring Flames, final blows with solar abilities or ignitions increase the damage of your solar ability, stacks up to 3 times. So any of the solar ability kills that you get, or any ignitions, including from weapons, will stack from Burning Maul, which is really cool. And then obviously you want the Consecration aspect. So while you're sliding, activate your charge melee ability to launch a wave of solar energy forward, damaging and scorching targets in front of you as you leap into the air. And while you're in the air, press your melee button again to slam to the ground and create a second large wave of damaging solar energy. If the wave hits a scorched target, they ignite. So this is pretty much a free ignition, and with the exotic you also create a small cyclone there as well. So this thing is going to be extremely good for ad control. For fragments, first up, Ember of Empyrean. Solar weapon and ability final blows extend the effect of restoration and radiant effects applied to you. Now we're going to become radiant from Flint Striker here on the artifact, so there's rapid solar weapon, precision hits, and final blows, and that'll be very easy to use with our weapons. But the way we're going to gain restoration is number 1, put on Ember of Searing. So defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite. Now, outside of being able to get that melee back even faster from defeating scorched targets, with Ember of Mercy, when you revive an ally, you and other nearby allies gain restoration, but the main thing is picking up a fire sprite grants restoration. Now, they fixed the issue a while back to where picking up one would reset your restoration timer, but now fire sprites actually stack on restoration, so you can keep it up pretty much indefinitely once you get it. And then the last one is Ember of Ashes, so you can apply more scorch stacks to targets, which means potential more ignitions. Now on the artifact, outside of Flint Striker, we're still going to be using Kindling Trigger, Torch, and Raised Precision. Remember, ignitions also help Roaring Flame, so getting a free ignition proc, from a Radiant Solar Weapon Precision Final Blow is really good. We still got on From Which You Came and Wishing to Being, but we added number 1, Heart of Flame. Casting your solar super grants nearby allies radiant and increases the damage of your super for each nearby ally. So on top of Burning Maul already dealing crazy damage, you can have it do even more damage as long as you pop it near your allies. And the second one, which is Revitalizing Blast, causing damage with a solar ability weakens champions and bosses for a short duration. So the really cool thing here is that you can actually throw your throwing hammer at a target that's a boss or champion, weaken them, and then go pick up the hammer and get it again. And then you could potentially use Consecration on that target once they're stunned, but pretty much these abilities will allow you to add that free weaken proc for duration. And then lastly, I am using Hail of the Storm, mainly because I'm going to be pairing this with Conditional Finality to take advantage of the extra damage from, shattering a frozen target, and then also the little slow things that fly off too. So that's going to be good. For armor mods and stats, for resilience, obviously want that at 100. We talk about it for every setup. Make sure resilience is at 100. You want good survivability. Secondly, I would focus on strength. Again, with strength, we're going to be able to get that melee back faster, which means we can proc Consecration even more often for more ad control. Now, for the mods, on the helmet, I got Harmonic Siphon with double hands-on. On the gauntlets, double impact induction with heavy-handed. On the chest, I have Harmonic Reserves with melee and arc resistance, but you can switch these around if you would like. On the boots, I got Recuperation with double solar weapon surge. And then on the class item, I got Time Dilation with double outreach. For weapons, like I mentioned, I really like Conditional Finality here. We can stop unstopped champions, we can freeze targets, and also cause ignitions with pretty much one weapon. So if you get a multi-kill with the ignition portion of Conditional, Flint Striker still procs, which is pretty cool. Now, if you don't have Conditional, you could potentially use a Fusion Rifle. Again, I have the Scatter Sigil here with Slice and Controlled Burst. With Slice, I can apply that Sever after I use my class ability, which can still proc Torch as long as I am Radiant. And you could just take off Hail of the Storm and put on Horde Shuttle or Unraveling Orbs if you would like in that scenario. But also a Fusion Rifle with Chill Clip would work just as well. In the energy slot, again, put on your favorite solar primary weapon. Anything with Incandescence is going to be fine. Like I said, Summoner, Epic Integration, Callous Mini Tool, Abyss Defiant. Again, if you don't have Conditional, you could potentially put on Sunshot as your exotic. Any of these weapons will work. Just put on your favorite solar primary. And then the heavy slot, pretty simple, your favorite solar heavy weapon, anything from Apex Predator, Briar's Contempt, Cataclysmic. And if you didn't want to use, an exotic here in the top slot, you could potentially put on Dragon's Breath as well. It's going to be really good for single target damage and destroy anything that's around that target. So Dragon's Breath has a lot of great potential with this build as well for DPS. Another solar setup that I like is the Honey Bun build with Ashen Wake. Now with this perk, Bring the Heat, Fusion Grenades gain increased throw speed, explode on impact, and stun unstoppable champions. Final blows with Fusion Grenades grant grenade energy. So after you get 4 kills with the grenade, you can get the grenade back just like that, but there's going to be multiple ways for us to get the grenade back very quickly. But the cool thing here is that the grenade can now stun unstoppable champions. That is a bonus that was added on recently. For your super, you can either use Burning Maul or Hammer of Soul. If you want to use Burning Maul and then do the hot swap to Power Gale Gauntlets for the high damage one-hit super, again, you totally can. That's up to you. For abilities, you can use whatever barricade you want, and movement. For melee, I'm still going to be using the throwing hammer here and also the fusion grenade. For aspects, I'm still going to be using Roaring Flames for that stacking solar ability damage, but now I'm also going to be pairing that with Soul Invictus. So solar ability final blows, Hammer of Soul impacts, and defeated scorched targets create sunspots. Your abilities regenerate faster and your super drains more slowly while standing in a sunspot. Sunspots applies scorch and deal damage to targets inside. Entering a sunspot applies restoration. For my fragments here, I'm going to be using Ember of Torches, so powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant. Next, Ember of Empyrean, so the solar weapon ability final blows can extend restoration and radiant, and again we get restoration from stepping into a sunspot and radiant from just hitting a target with the melee. Next, I like Ember of Blistering, so defeating targets with solar ignitions grants grenade energy, so we can get that fusion grenade back as quickly as possible. And then Ember of Ashes, again you apply more scorch stacks to targets. Under the artifact, we don't need Flint Striker because we're going to become radiant from Ember of Torches. So we could still take advantage of Kindling Trigger, Torch, and then also Raise Precision since, all those require us to be Radiant. Again, since I am using a Solar Super, Heart of the Flame and Revitalizing Blast is going to be key. Still using From Whence You Came and Wish Into Being, but I am going to be using a Strand weapon here, so I'm putting on Unraveling Orbs and Horde Shuttle again. For armor mods and stats, obviously, Resilience you want at 100, but then focus on Discipline. Discipline is tied to how fast you can get that grenade back, and we want that fusion grenade back as quickly as possible. Now, for armor mods, on the helmet, I got Harmonic Siphon with double Ashes to Assets. On the gauntlets, double Impact Induction with Firepower. On the chest piece, I got Strand and Harmonic Reserves with Arc Resistance, but you can switch this one out for whatever if you would like. On the boots here, I have Innervation, so I can get that grenade back faster with Orb Pickup. Since we have Restoration, we're going to heal pretty easily, but you can switch this out for Recuperation if you'd like. Also, double Solar Weapon Surge here on the boots, and then on the class item, I got Time Dilation and double Bomber. For weapons, obviously in the energy and heavy slot, put on your favorite solar weapons here. I really like Dragon's Breath with this setup, but for my primary, I'm using a special weapon, the Scatter Signal in particular. This is a Strand fusion. Again, with Slice, after I use that class item, I can shoot a target and cause the Sever debuff. With Controlled Burst, as long as I hit every shot on a target, I get that improved weapon damage. And with that, with Unraveling Orbs, now we can also have Unraveling Rounds to deal that Unravel, and then Horde Shuttle, so as long as I damage the Unravel target, it'll spawn a Threadling. But the main thing is that we can take advantage of Torch, so while we're Radiant, I can apply that Strand debuff from the fusion and gain the bonus weapon damage. So all I have to do is like shoot a target with Dragon's Breath and just Meg Dump Scatter Signal, and then just switch back to Dragon's Breath, shoot a shot, switch back to the fusion rifle. It's really good for DPS, and the build overall is just really good for survivability. Now, the last build on the list is going to focus around the Arc subclass, pairing it with the Heart of Inmost Light. This is easily one of the best overall PvE exotics to have, so if you don't have it, I would recommend getting it. But its perk, Overflowing Light, using an ability, your grenade, melee, or class ability, empowers the other two abilities. Empowered means abilities have faster regen, melees and grenades do more damage, and barricades have more hit points. For the super, obviously, we're going to be using Thunder Crash for a lot of damage here. Now, what's pretty cool is that once you have that super and you want to use it, you can swap to Curious of the Falling Star. With its perk, Glorious Charge, greatly increases your Thunder Crash impact damage, gain an overshield that lasts longer the farther you travel before striking a target. Basically, with this exotic, it allows that Thunder Crash to deal even more damage. So once you have the super, you want to use it, switch to the exotic. Once you use the super, you can switch back to Heart of Inmost Light. For abilities, I personally like a Thruster here. It's just something that's really fast and easy to use. I can evade targets, but you can use the barricades if you would like. For movement, I like Strafe. You can use what you want. For melee, I personally like Thunderclap. You can charge it up. It'll deal a lot of damage here, but if you wanted to use something like Seismic Strike or Ballistic Slam, that's totally fine. For the grenade, I would highly recommend the Pulse Grenade. For aspects, first up here with Knockout. Critically wounding a target or breaking their shield infuses your melee attacks with Arc Energy and increases your melee range and damage for a short time. Defeating targets with melee attacks starts health regeneration and makes you amplified. Being amplified is going to be one of the big ones here. And then Touch of Thunder. This gives us a variety of bonuses to 4 of the grenades, mainly with the Pulse Grenade. It creates ionic traces periodically as it damages targets and increases in damage over time. And with those ionic traces, they'll track to us and give us ability energy. So you could toss this on a boss, for example, have a grenade that has increasing damage and gives you ability energy back. For fragments, first up, I like Spark of Resistance. So if you are surrounded by combatants who are more resistant to incoming damage. So if you already have 100 resilience, this will stack on top of it. Next, Spark of Shock, your arc grenades jolt target, so we get that free jolt proc from just throwing out our pulse grenade. Next, Spark of Magnitude, your lingering arc grenades have extended duration, which means our pulse grenade is going to last longer. And then lastly, Spark of Amplitude, rapidly defeating targets while you're amplified creates an orb of power, so it's going to be good for you and your allies. Now, even though the artifact doesn't have a lot going for it in terms of the arc subclass, we still can take advantage of both the stasis and solar portions with weapons. So I would recommend Flame Fiber and Freeze with Flint Striker, Kindling Trigger, Torch, Pillar of Ice, Hail the Storm, Raise Precision. Again, we can still get those ignitions as long as we're Radiant with Flint Striker and using solar weapons. So again, that's going to be fantastic. And I still got on from whence you came and wished into being. For armor mods and stats, obviously Resiliency 1 out of 100. The second one I'd recommend is Discipline. Having a high Discipline means we can get that grenade back faster. You don't need Strength too high, considering we can get the melee back pretty quick, and you don't have to worry about the class ability because that's tied to Resilience and that's already maxed out. Now for armor mods, I am using the Thermodynamic Siphon for the Rapid Solar and Stasis Weapon Final Blows to create Orbs of Power. Also got access to assets here with Powerful Friends. On the gauntlets, I'm using Impact Induction with Momentum Transfer and Firepower. On the chest piece, I got Solar Reserves with Solar Resistance and Void Resistance, but you can switch these out for what resistance mods that you'd like. On the legs, I like Recuperation with double Solar Weapon Surge. And on the class item, Time Dilation with Reaper and Bomber. For weapons, still really like Conditional Finality here for both the Stasis and Solar portions. So if we get a multi-kill with the Ignition, we become Radiant. Again, with Pillar of Ice, creating a Stasis Crystal after defeating a frozen target and having the increased Shatter damage and the slow procs from breaking a Stasis Crystal. Again, all those bonuses can just come from Conditional. And then for your energy and heavy, put on your favorite solar weapons. But that, ladies and gentlemen, are my recommended Titan builds that you bring into the new PvE Horde mode Onslaught coming with Into the Light on April 9th. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you want to copy any of these builds, the dim links will be in the description. Whether you want to copy the subclass, the armor mods, the weapons, the drip if you would like, anything from the ornaments, the shaders, all that's going to be provided in all those dim links. And copy for yourself, test it out, and make adjustments as needed that are going to work for you when it comes to this activity. In any event, if what you saw was valuable or entertaining to you, be sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss out on any other gaming content that I drop here on the channel. Like I mentioned, we do live streams here on YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok all at the same time, a couple days a week. If you would like some updates, again, be sure to follow the Twitch, join the Discord, that link will be in the description. We do run Destiny 2 help, so if you do need help with GMs, dungeons, raids, whatever we're doing during the day and you want to hop in, again, hop in the chat, hop in the Discord, we can help you out. Last thing before I go, if you want to help support the channel even more, you can look into becoming a member. A membership is essentially a Twitch subscription, but on YouTube, it's actually cheaper on YouTube, which is just hilarious in any event. The main thing is that you get access to exclusive emotes, monthly badges, and other cool things here on the channel. Mainly, you get access to some of my exclusive content early. So if you would like more information, all you have to do is press the join button next subscribe, and I'll give you a rundown with all the details you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Spinning Boy, we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers!